Okay, guys, mic check, mic check. One, two. Can you hear us?
Oh,
I hope you can hear us. Please say you can hear us. Okay, cool, awesome. All right, hello, guys. Like I said, this is Jessinia of Jellyfish Parade, the dev, the lead behind Belle Automata and games like Pears and Celestia. Over here butchering names. I'm so
mhm.
sorry. Celestia, as
It's
well
okay.
as Heroine for Hire. These are all indie Otome games that feature black and brown characters. In prominent roles, and I adore them. I adore them. I first discovered Jessinia through Pairs, and it's been a love affair ever since. Like anything that Jessinia puts out, I will play in a heartbeat without question. So yeah, like I'm just really excited to have her here with us. And let me pull up the questions like a real professional, like interview streamer. Yeah, there we go. So yes, thank you for coming and joining me, Jessinia. It's really great to have you here and to see you and talk to you. I did an interview with you a couple years ago after I played Pairs, I think, and it was written and it was on my site. So this is really fun to actually be able to talk to you and hear you say these things out loud, like with words. But the
I'm
first thing,
excited too.
yay! I'm so excited. But yeah, yeah, the first thing is I like to give my viewers a better understanding and a feel of who you are and what Jellyfish Parade is. So if you could just introduce yourself, tell us what Jellyfish Parade is, tell us about yourself and the games that you've done. Like just you know.
Sure. Okay, so Jellyfish Parade first originated after I created Pears, and Of Ice and Snow, which was my very first visual novel. It's not strictly Otome, but it's like an original fairy tale. In any case, I wanted to pick a name that was fun and also water themed because my magnum opus, like the game that I really wanted to create, was also water themed, like under the water. So I went with jellyfish because I love jellyfish. I think they're a really beautiful animal. And parade because it's fun. It's like exciting. And so that was what I wanted to do. Um, Also, as far as me personally, I am 28 years old. I'm from Philadelphia originally, but I live in Oregon now. And I love making games. That's pretty much it.
I love it. I love it. See, like I said, I just love it because you're just, like I love talking to indie devs because you guys are just regular folks and y'all are creating these stories because you these are the stories that you want to see out there that you want people to experience. And it's just really nice to talk to you and just see that you're a person and not like some corporate entity just like kicking these suckers out for, the profits and things. I mean, of course profits are big and y'all need to still eat. But I think it's really cool that you're just so personable and bubbly and I love it.
Thank
um
you.
but before we dive into like your work with Jellyfish Parade, tell me a bit about when your love of games developed and like what were the titles that sparked your love of games? Like what are the games that got you interested in gaming and deving?
Legend of Zelda Wind Waker is one of my first games that I played. I was in third grade, and my dad actually had purchased the GameCube. And so I remember we didn't have a memory card yet because we were broke. And so we couldn't turn off the game, or otherwise you'd lose all your progress. So
Yes.
I remember playing through that game with my dad's permission, like all night. And I just had I had a blast playing it. That's one of my first games. Another game that I really love is Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door. I actually bought a GameCube to replay that game, and it was just as great as I remembered as a kid. But I loved RPGs, and then later, what introduced me to Otomes is Ari Alistair. That
Yes.
game was one of my first. And when I realized that there were games like that out there, it was really cool because the only time I'd heard of them, at the time I used to watch anime, and On High School Host Club was coming out. So I watched that anime, and there was the manager who played Otome games. And I was like, where are these games so I can play
Yes.
them? And so that's when I started searching online, like, how do I find the names of this game? I realized that they were called Otome, and I was like, oh, I want to make these. But it was years before I actually started making one. My first ever planned game was actually a Hitalia game, but I never
Really?
made it.
Wait,
I never got
no.
a chance to do that, unfortunately. But I have always loved games, and my love for Otome came a little later, but I still love those as well.
That would have been awesome, a Hetalia game. Like I would play the heck out of that. Like yesterday. Like yesterday. I love Hetalia. Now I will say this, and y'all can y'all can hate if you want, but I never really like got into Zelda, but I definitely understand not being able to afford a memory card and just leaving your game on all the time because that's all you had. So I get that. My brothers had like a PlayStation, so yeah, we were in that boat because we was broke skis too. But yeah, no, RPGs. And then Realister. I played that eons ago. That was like one of the first games I played because back in the olden times, like indie games weren't as well known, but like they were there and they were more accessible than any of the other games because I couldn't afford to get a Vita at the time. I just had my phone, I had my computer, my crap top, and that was kind of it. And I remember finding like all of these like indie games and I was like, what are these? These are fun because I love shojo. I love shojo stuff. So having that and like having it be like I could pick whichever character I want because one of the big things that like hurt my soul a little bit about Oran is that I could not like Haruhi does not end up with Hikaru. I don't care what anybody says about that, but I loved Haruhi and Hikaru, and I was so sad that she couldn't be with him. And knowing that there were these games that allowed you to play as a female protagonist and romance all of the guys at your leisure, that just was like, oh my god, mind blown. No, just ambiguous friend ending, just like I get to be with this person. So yes, love it. I love it. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much.
No, no, you're not. I love hearing your perspective too.
Because it's just really, yeah, I just love it. That's why I like Otome games, because I can get with whatever guy I want, and there's no like restriction on you have to be on this set path. It's whoever the hell you want. Now, if you want a full clear game, then yeah, you got to play through the duds. But that's what I love about it, and that's what I think is so appealing to a lot of players. But specifically for me as a black gamer, as a gamer of color, even within indie games, there aren't a lot of games that feature full casts of black and brown characters. Like I said earlier, you'll get like one or two maybe characters of color that are either a love interest or a side character or something like that. And your games, Jellyfish Parade, initially stuck out to me because it was one of the first games that I found, or Pairs, I should say, was one of the first games that I found where it was romance themed and you could play as a black protagonist and you could romance black and brown characters and characters of color. And it wasn't like a offshoot, kind of like an afterthought. It was very much a part of the story and the plot. And that's really what just made me go, oh my God, I love this. Then I started playing, then I played, oh, what was the next one? It was, not Celestia. It was Heroine. Yeah, it was Pairs. Fuck it up. It's Pairs. I know I played
Went for
Celestia.
hire,
Heroine for
War of
Hire. I
Roses,
played
Celestia.
War of Roses, Celestia. I played through all of them like immediately as soon as they came out because I was like, I must play now. And you're also working on Ocean Pearls, which is a underwater merman themed romance game but the consistency between your projects is that all of the main characters, the heroines, are black women. They come from different backgrounds and they have different styles and they have different looks, but they are black women, and the love interests are either black men or men of color that you can romance. They're very, I mean, there's diversity. There are other characters there. They're more pale characters there as well. But what resonated with me more was the fact that I could play as a black female character, someone that was very much like me, and romance a bunch of guys that I would probably have gone for. Not that I don't go for the Bishonen Japanese Otome characters, but like these are guys that I would 100% jump their bones if I saw them in real time. And I want to say thank you because you've created this wonderful like empire of these games, and it's just like a consistent well of just like, yes, I went to BlurredCon like the year before last, and I was in a panel. It was for Black Girl Gamers, and I literally shouted you out. I was like, oh, I play Otome games, but like if you looking for characters and like games where you could play as a black character and like romance these ebony hotties, I got you. Jellyfish Parade. And a couple of them was like Googling you as I was talking, and they were just like talking amongst themselves going like, oh shit, I didn't know this existed. Like, oh my God, like yes. Because they were looking up Ocean Pearls and they're seeing these characters and they're just like, oh damn, I'm gonna play this right now. Thank you. Thank you for the note, sis. I was like, no worries. I got you, fam. I got you. But just to see that there was such a big demand, especially in a space like that where it was just like full of blackness, and just to be able to hype you up and then to see people in real time getting excited like I did when I saw these games for the first time, I was like, yes. So I hope a bunch of people played it as a result. Please, please do. But there's a question here, of course.
Thank you.
There's a question here, but it says, as a person of color and content creator, as a person of color and a content creator, how do you feel characters of color are being portrayed in the media, specifically in visual novels, indie or otherwise? And what steps do you take when you're creating your own content to positively represent these characters in the media that you create? I know that was like a twofold question, but
No, it's fine. So there's kind of a two-part answer. The first answer is that as far as how I feel about characters of colors being portrayed, a lot of the times they're very ambiguously brown, and that kind of frustrates me because as a black person, I want to say for certain, okay, this person is black. I can identify them because they can have the same cultural background as me. So I can like feel like I'm on the same, like I have the same vibe with them. And so when I found out like, oh, okay, they're Latino, or oh, they're this race or that race, I still identify with them as a person of color, but it's not the same as if I know for certain what background they come from. Um, so that's a point of frustration for me. However, I do like that more games are introducing more than one person of color. Like, of course, Otome being Japanese and origins, technically you could say all of them are persons of color, but they're not black or brown. They're mostly pale, paleted, so you get a bunch of love interests from various backgrounds, but they're not black or brown. So I loved seeing games that come out and have their own cultures. One of my favorites is Nusantara, the Winged Ones, Legend of the Winged
yes.
Ones.
Oh my god,
That
yes.
game is amazing. It's got Indonesian culture in
Yes.
it. It's incredible. If you want to talk about like diverse games and games where the creators are really giving a shout out to their own cultures, I love games like that. So that's how I feel about like the portrayal. As far as what steps I take, I come from a pretty diverse background. Of course, being from Philly, there's a lot of black people, but one of my aunts is married to a Puerto Rican man, and
Ooh.
so his through him, I was introduced to like the Spanish Hispanic culture and like a lot of different people from South America and from Mexico. And so since that was a part of my life growing up, you grow up with black and brown people and you just kind of like feel close to them. So usually I can talk to my family. I know I have a friend, she was talking about the character design of Diego in Belle Automata, and she was like, he's Puerto Rican, he looks Puerto Rican. And so I was like, girl, he is Puerto Rican,
I
like whatever
love
you
it.
want, baby. And so there's like a lot of, I try to incorporate a lot of black and brown characters from my background. There's also characters from other backgrounds, like my grandmother is really close to the Hindi community because she does a lot of community work in that community. So like that was my introduction to like India, and so not saying I know everything about India, but that made me want to, of course, create more Indian characters as well. So I added Divya in World War of Roses, who is an
Yes.
Indian American young woman.
Who I love.
Um, and also your rival in love with Armando. So
Yes.
there's a lot of fun stuff, a lot of like fun ways that I've been able to try to positively represent the cultures behind people that I know personally. So that helps a lot. And the more I get to know people, the more diverse my games become. Um, I used to live in Thailand actually for about 3 years, and that really I can speak and read and write Thai. So I've always wanted to introduce more Thai characters into my next works. So Klaus is actually part Thai, part black,
Nice.
and part German. So that's why his name is Klaus. And most likely you'll get to know a little bit about his background in his own route. But yeah, that's a little bit of my association with different cultures and how I try to present that in my games.
Okay, so I've learned a lot about you just now. I did not know you can speak Thai and read it, and that you spent time in Thailand. That's amazing. I want to travel, but you know how it be with money and like pandemics and things. So one day, eventually. But that's fantastic, and I love that you are not only pulling from your own life, but from the experiences of people around you for the characters and the stories that you're telling. So it's a bit more organic than just kind of pulling a piecemeal token character and throwing them in there. You're actually taking the time to get to know people from that culture and incorporating those mannerisms into your characters. And I love that you brought up about having the characters that you would like to see that look like you and that act like you and that do things like you, because there's a scene in Ocean Pearls, the demo, in which the main character, she straightens her hair straightened. It's short, but it's straightened out. And it's like a very small scene, but it was something that was just so inherently black that it made me go, okay, so she's black without you saying, look, I'm black. She's blackity black, black, black. So she has straightened hair, and any person who has had their hair straightened and had you straighten their hair and then experience getting it wet knows what that's like to get your newly straightened hair that you spent 2 hours plus straightening and laying flat. Then you get a little sprinkle of rain from outside, or you get in an area that's a little too humid. Next thing you know, your hair is curling back up.
Curly.
Yes, but in Ocean Pearls, like I said, the main character, she's a black woman, she's a sculptor, and her hair is straight, it's a little pixie cut, and the game takes place in the ocean. She gonna fall into the ocean at some point. She falls into the ocean, and her hair curls up. And it's very little, like the sprite on screen, like every time you see her hair straight, she's in the corner, she's doing her thing, it's laid down. But when she falls into the ocean, her hair curls up. And it's a very small, tiny detail, but it was one that was just like, she's black without saying, look, she's black. Her hair is straightened. Of course, it's going to go back to its natural state when it's wet. Even if you get a relaxer in your hair is still gonna curl up somewhere. It's okay. And it was just such a small little detail that made her black. And it was relatable to me as a black woman who's had, you see my hair. I try to straighten it, spends like 3+ hours trying to straighten my hair, and it goes back to this immediately. So to see that in a game, it was just like, oh my God. Because I've seen games where characters of color are portrayed and that doesn't happen. And that's because either it's not an integral detail that anybody thinks about, but it's usually devs who are not devs of color who've never had this experience. So they don't know that it's something that would happen, or they do know it's something that would happen, but it's not important enough to include in the narrative. And like, I really appreciated seeing that. Like it's really tiny. It's really dumb. It's kind of like a dumb detail to notice, but it was like one of those things that went, okay, might you be black? And then I looked and I was like, yep. I was like, all right, bet. So I really appreciated that. And there's just a way of saying that your characters are from a certain culture or a certain background without having to say there's a nuance to these characters. They're not defined by their ethnicity or their race or their appearance. They're just these characters. And you add in these little details that make them inherently black without having to be like, they speak like this, or they wear these type of clothes, or they do this, and that makes them black. It's just, they exist, and there are these little things that make them that. So that's just one of the things that I really appreciate. And I just wanted to bring it up because, like, I love what you just said, and I was like, that's one of the things that highlights what makes you such a great dev and one of my faves. I say it all the time. You're literally one of my faves. But
Thank you.
Yes, no, thank you. So, yes. So we talked a bit a couple days ago about your experiences as being an indie dev and some of the good things and not so great things that happens around that. If you could, and if you feel comfortable, I would love to hear a bit of your experiences being an indie dev and what that feels like being an indie creator. Not only just an indie creator of color, but just an indie dev when compared with like Otome games and how dealing with the fandom, just good things, bad things, whatever you want to share about your experiences. Because I know you've got a lot more games under your belt than the last time we spoke. And I just want to see what has changed and what you've learned along the way.
Great things definitely is when my fans engage with me and tell me like, oh, I really liked this about your game. For example, this is like an old example, but back when I developed Pairs, one of the characters, James, is Chinese American. And I had a Chinese dev actually thank me for including a Chinese character because she said, well, normally there's a lot of Japanese characters, there's Korean characters, but it's rare that I see a Chinese character. And that really touched me. I just I think about that comment every time I feel like, oh, no one's playing my games, or is it really worth it? Like, I'm spending all this money to make these games. Like, does anyone care? But honestly, when I hear those comments that are really warm and encouraging, it makes me want to make more games. Like,
Yes.
punch a little bit further, to try a little bit harder to incorporate even more of just blackness in games in general. Negative, the not so great. Oh, there's lots of that. Definitely, I feel sometimes that, how do I put this lightly?
Go on,
The
be candid.
Otome,
Be
the
candid.
Otome community is not always open to blackness, and
Yeah.
sometimes I feel there's a lot of resistance to what I create. Um, I have had people say, "Oh, well, the colors in Heroine for Hire are too muddy," for example. And I know what that means. Like, that you have no problem with a painterly art style. It's just that the characters are all brown. You should just say that with your whole chest. Like, I've heard those kinds of comments as
There it
well.
is.
And then on the yeah, on the other hand, you get people who tell me that my characters aren't black enough, and I'm like, so who am I making these games for?
Yeah, exactly. What does that mean?
But
Like, what does black enough
yeah.
mean? Like, explain that to me, because I've gotten that before as well. It's like, oh, you don't act like what? Go ahead, finish the sentence. Go ahead,
Right.
go
Say
ahead.
it with your whole chest.
Yeah,
Don't
be
be
wrong.
scared. If
Yeah,
you
be
have
wrong.
the nerve to say it, then say it with your whole chest.
But yes, because I've talked with devs before who do like LGBTQ plus games, and they said that they've gotten some not so nice comments from folks in the Otome community about having games being called Otome, and they have these different types of characters, which is why, again, the indie scene has brought out about the Amari term to kind of encompass romance games that focus on characters from all backgrounds, all identities and things like that. So it's more inclusive of a title. And I will be honest, I have also noticed that some people, they say some real shady stuff about characters of color that show up in games. They're like, oh, well, I think I remember there was a dev like a couple years ago. I won't say names, but they had made a comment that it was hard to put characters of color in their games because it was hard to pick the right colors for their outfits and things like that. And I'm just sitting here going, what does that mean? And it made me think back to when I was a kid, and like, you know how you remember Barbie, like the Barbies, and there would be the black Barbie, what's her name, Chrissy. They would always put her in like day glow colors. Like Barbie would have pink and purple and all these nice soft pastels, but they would stick my homegirl with the ebony skin and like day glow orange and green. And I'm sitting here like, the hell? Can't I wear pink too? Can't I wear nice pastels too? Like, what does that mean? So I think when folks make those excuses and they say these kind of like off statements about why it's difficult to have characters of color in a game, or why they don't look as good in quotation marks, and I say in quotation marks because that's bullshit. In games, it's an inherent bias there just under the surface. And when I do hear creators saying that they can't do it because it's harder to do, that's just the lack of effort. You would put in an effort for anything else, but you're not going to put in an extra effort to make sure the shading on this character looks well. They don't come out looking like orange, or they look warm and not
girl.
like the sun. Like, come on, like I'm a nice.
I saw a Kickstarter recently, and they had one brown character out of a cast of 4. So I was like, okay, I can take 25% of the cast. That character was great, girl. I was like,
and that's it,
y'all.
And that's what ends up happening. We end up like looking for scraps when we shouldn't have to look for scraps. Like, especially in like when you're an anime fan. I remember being younger and an anime fan before, this renaissance of having blackness in anime, because they realized that black folks like anime too. But before that, it was like grasping at straws. Any brown character I saw, or brown adjacent character, was black. I just claimed them for the culture because that's kind of all we had. And we should not be grasping at straws.
People were claiming Piccolo.
Yes.
From Dragon Ball.
Okay. But in his defense, we will keep Piccolo, but Goku can go somewhere else. Piccolo is 100% one of us. He was a good dad. He was there. He was.
I'm not saying he wasn't. I'm just saying we were definitely going green. Like, we were like, this green character is black. It doesn't matter. He is.
And that's literally how this would go. It was just like we would have to grasp at straws and like hope for the best. And like what you said, it was like, oh, they have one black character. Okay, I'll take 25%. It shouldn't have to be that way. There should be more characters of color in these stories. It's not like we're just one homogenous group and it's like, oh, I got one black person that covers all of them. No, it does not. As a person who went to an HBCU, let me tell you, with my whole chest. Black folks ain't all the same. They will never be the same. That is like that was the most eye-opening experience for me, black woman here, going to an HBCU and seeing so many black folks from all over the world who acted differently, who did things. Because I came from the South, and my first thought was, oh, black people were the same. They like rap music, they wear their pants halfway down their ass. That was kind of how it was, because that's where it was, where I was in the suburbs. Because you kind of had to prove that you were black if you lived in the suburbs in Georgia. But at Howard, it was a whole different experience because we were just allowed to exist and be. I was taking Japanese culture classes. I took Japanese at Howard. I met a bunch of folks through Japanese class. I took Taekwondo. Like, I met folks from California who have a whole different vibe than folks from the East Coast. They're a little more chill. People from the Midwest, like people from the North. It was just a
It's really
whole,
different for that too.
yeah.
Like Philly, West Philly is where I'm from, and it's like West Philadelphia, born and raised, like straight up. And black people are so like, I knew a lot of black people growing up who were into anime. I knew a lot of black people who read manga. Like my library had all of those things. And so because it was available to me, I never thought it was weird or different. It wasn't until I left Philly and like started meeting people
Outside.
outside of like that very inclusive
Hmm.
community that I really was like, wow, people don't know.
Yes.
People don't know that we play Otome games, that we do more than just play sports, and just like it's just
Sing.
crazy to me.
I
I
can't
because I
sing.
grew up knowing that, and so
It was just a part of
it's
your
wild.
existence. Yeah, like I said, I
Yeah.
can't sing, I can't dance, I can't rap. Don't ask me to do any of those three things. I will fail every time. But if you want to have a conversation, I got you, fam. You want to talk about a book? I got you. You want to play? I want a game wreck? I got you. Let's go. Want some manga? I got you. But yeah, and it's nice to see, like, that's why representation is so important, because a lot of times when creators are creating characters, especially characters of color, they are basing it off of the existing stereotypes, what's already out there in the media, without really doing the heavy lifting of doing the research and actually interacting with people from these cultures that they're trying to portray in whatever it is. And you end up getting the same characters over and over and over again, and the same looks over and over and over again. I don't know how many times I gotta say with my whole chest, please stop giving black folks dreadlocks in games. Please stop doing that. Give us other hair, please, and thank you. We got different types of hair. We do different stuff. And I remember when we talked about pairs, you had shared with me like some like art that you had done of Kitten Pink, one of your characters who is low key coded black. Like, not gonna lie, sis got the pink, cotton candy pink hair, and she wears it differently. And you showed me different styles that you had thought up for her hair, from braids to the little puffs to the hair that she has in the game where it's a little wavy in the back and it's got the little braids going back. And there are just so many different things that you could do, and there's so many different ways to portray us and other people of color, and it just feels like we keep getting the same characters over and over again. And I love when folks branch out and they ask questions. I've had devs before ask me like, what do you think about diversity in games, or how do you feel about this for a character? And I'll be really honest, I'm like, I mean, it works, but if you're going to do that, maybe consider doing this. Or that's not a bad idea. Just make sure that their blackness isn't the ending and a beginning of their character. Because I swear to God, I will rip you a new one and I won't care. Because like, if you got the balls to put a character of color in your game, then you have the balls to stand up to criticism. I'm not going to just be like, oh, it's a black character. Yes. Thank you so much for this crappy character. No, I'm going to rip you a new one. 100%. I don't care who it is.
So I'm not gonna name any names, but there
No.
is a game out there that is in development, and their darkest character is a gang leader. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, I'll give the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they're not all like, maybe there are other brown characters who are not in that position, and like who aren't super dark skinned, and who, like, I tried to give the benefit of the doubt, but I DM'd them and I was like, hey, I'm hoping that you have like a sensitivity reader, like,
Yes.
because this could be really impactful on people, because
Yes.
your game looks like it's going to be very popular, just judging by the reception you got. I want you to know they DM'd me back and basically were like, oh, it's not as bad as it looks, just like play the demo and like you'll see. And I was just like,
I get
So I sent them a response where that was very like I kind of read them their rights
Yeah,
and
you got to.
basically just had to say like, look, this character is based off a criminal stereotype, and if you really did consult someone, then they have failed you
Yeah.
because it just when you have a character who's dark skinned and then you make them a criminal gang leader. Oh, sorry. I hope that you don't know exactly what I'm talking about, but
Probably
when you
does.
do have that game of that type, it's just very damaging.
Yes.
Where like if you're going to do this, why didn't you make the businessman black? Why didn't you make someone else like a hacker black? Why is it the dark skinned one is the criminal gang leader who's going against like society or whatever? It's just very frustrating for me to see other devs do, especially when they finally are like, okay, we're going to include people of color, characters of color, and I get us all excited, and then I see the character of color and I'm like,
what is this?
you just had to do this.
Why?
You
Why?
just had to do this.
I was like, why are we like this today? Why are we like this today? But I love that you said, why can't you make the black character a businessman? Because you got Gabe in War of Roses. And Gabe is like my Ebony King. That is what I'm looking for. A CEO in a cut suit, dark as hell, go take care of me and feed me and just treat me with all the care and respect. That is what I'm looking for. That is my Ebony King. So you can do it. Like, the sky is really the limit, and it just be real frustrating to see black folks getting shoehorned into these roles. I have not seen that game, probably because I was buried knee deep in something else at the time, but now I'm gonna ask you later because I want to know what this is because I need to look at it. But I need to look at it.
Tell you about it.
I need to look at it for me personally, because in their defense, it could work. It could be a really great portrayal, but given the history of how black folks and people of color have been portrayed in the media, I mean, hell, look at BL games like Dramatical Murder. They got a character named Mink. He's the darkest love interest in that game, and he's low key a criminal. His version of the Platinum Jail is low key a prison, and he surrounds himself with criminals. He got locks, man. This man got locks, a pink parrot, and he low key just be like taking whatever he wants. And I'm like,
oh gosh.
He's technically not black, but he's heavily coded black, and I got some questions that I don't like here. So it's
Hold on, wait. There's one more game I want to shout out, but not shout out. There's a game out there.
Go for it.
And this is the kind of stuff I see, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? And their darkest character, they called him the Slave. No joke. This is a serious thing.
Wait.
And when one of my friends gave them lip about it, who's another black dev, her name is Always JMB. Her games are great. She's working on The Closet Door right now. I'm shouting her out. But anyway, she gave him some lip, and people were defending this person for having their only black character or brown character be a slave. So they renamed it The Gladiator and kept the plot line the same. This really happened.
I know what you're talking about. Oh my god. Yeah. Because when you said it, I was like, that sounds familiar. This sounds so familiar. Then I'm like, I know exactly what you're talking about. Because I remember looking at it, I was like, I squinted real hard. I was like, is this Terradin all over again? Because please don't be Terradin all over again. Terradin, if you don't know,
man.
is a throwback. It's an older indie Otome game that was developed by a studio that's now defunct. They're not doing anything anymore. And it's about you. So all the characters in this game are black or brown. They're black or brown. So all these characters are black or brown. You play as a black woman who is like a royal. I forget if she's like a princess or some shit like that, but she's like a royal. So you're black and a royal, and she buys these slaves. They are also black characters. So you buy these black slaves, and they are like the way they describe these characters is like there's a male slave guy and there's a female slave guy, or slave woman, and they're described she's described as being the most beautiful of all the beautiful. She's like the most exotic, beautiful woman you've ever seen in your life, and the guy is like the most beautiful, handsome, robust, strong man. So they're literally like this beautiful woman and a mandingo, and I'm like, so Okay. So I played the game. Just
Play that game.
because
I saw that game and was like,
I played it because I was like, let me make sure I'm not crazy. So I played it. Even though you're playing as a black royal person and you are romancing these slaves, there is a power dynamic that is so disgusting that it's not even funny. You own them. You have bought them. They are your slaves. And you literally are like the best way to get the best in is to keep them in servitude and like have them be your partner while still keeping they're a slave and you're their master kind of thing going. And then like the bad ends are like them trying to escape because they want to be free. And then you learn about their backstories, and that's supposed to be better because you're like, oh, I've learned about them. And they've had some real tragic upbringings because, again, they're slaves. They were sold into slavery. And it's just one of those games where I was like, why? I think I wrote a post. I was like, why do black folks always have to be slaves in games? Like, I wrote a review about it, but I was also just kind of like very scathing. I was like, why are we always slaves? I was like, just because you have a black female character romancing these people, the power dynamic's still there. They're still slaves. You are in a position of power romancing slaves that work for you. I don't understand. There's a BL game that has a similar premise, and it gave me the same vibes. I was like, okay, this isn't nearly as bad, but it's not great either. Like,
the power dynamic is one thing that really bothers me in games. And this is why when I created Ocean Pearls, the main character ends up accidentally engaged to these kings, like one of
Yeah.
5 kings, depending on what ocean she's in. And the one thing I really wanted to make sure was that she had a choice of whether she was going to go back to land or not. So you're not stuck. She's not a stuck character who's forced to be there. There is like I wanted to make sure she has autonomy. So like for one route, she gets transported to his ocean and they have to figure out how they can get apart from each other. And they spend the route literally trying to figure that out. And of course they fall in love along the way and she doesn't want to leave after that.
Details.
There's one king she can't stand. She can't stand him. And she's like, look, I'll help you with whatever problem you have, but I get to stay on land on the weekends. Like, we're not doing this. I'm not going to pretend to be your wife for the whole time. And he's like, cool, whatever. I don't like you anyway. And of course they fall in love anyway. But that idea of like, the character doesn't have a choice, they have to be there, I really hate it. And I feel like, yeah, I feel like when you have a character that doesn't have a choice in a romance and they're under the power of another person, that is not romance. No, that is not love.
That is never going to be love.
You can't do it.
No, it doesn't work because there's no agency in this. You have no choice. This is Stockholm. You were just forced into this room and you fell in love because that's all you had. There was either that or just like just being miserable the whole time. So yeah, no, just no. But yeah, Terradon. Yeah, just so
shout them out. But yeah, that game puts a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, and that's when I was like, this was not created by someone who was of color, just period. Because this
game, not at all.
This game would have never been a thought if this was a person of color. Like never a thought.
I feel like.
Yeah, I'm gonna make them slaves. Let's go.
Well, I won't say I feel like I knew of those devs and
they've had some questions.
They were not people of color.
No, they're absolutely not. I know for a fact they weren't. And they've also done some questionable game premises before. So it wasn't like that. It was never that bad, that egregious. But it was like I even did a double. I was like, am I actually seeing this? Like, is this reality or am I like imagining this shit like in the back of my head? Like, this is my nightmare. And then I looked, I was like, nah, this is real game. Download. And I was like, it's free, right? Yeah, let's see what this is. And I played it and I was like, my ancestors are upset with me right now. I don't blame them. I would be mad at me too. But yo, my ancestors were pissed. They were like, bitch, no. Just never again. I was like, I felt something wrong too. I'm sorry. Like in my chest, it just was like, what? wait, so I mean, yeah, he a cute looking guy. She's gorgeous, but like, they're slaves. Do we let them free? Are they free? Do we ever let them free? No. Okay. Oh, okay. They just work for us for life. Got it. Oh, okay. Whatever. Fine. Romance. Okay.
Because the main character is an android, and in their world, androids aren't normally sentient. They can't think and can't feel. They're machines. So the first thing that happens in the demo is she is freed. That's the
Yeah.
first thing. She destroys her proof of purchase. Because I was like, y'all, this is not no Stockholm syndrome. This is not happening in my game. I want all my characters to have autonomy. Every main character that I have has a choice.
I like that you bring up Belle Automata because, again, we're going to circle back to the Black Enough thing because I do remember there was a bit of quote-unquote controversy in quotation marks about the main character during the development process in quotation marks because it wasn't really controversy. It was just people talking out the side of their neck. But I do like that, like you said, she gets rid of her proof of purchase. She is an android. She's a sentient android. And only time you see sentient androids in anything is like iRobot or something where they're trying to take over and kill us all, or like some Terminator level shit. But you have these characters that are androids, but they're sentient and they are, for all intents and purposes, people. And they're having to navigate this kind of line between the fact that they are androids but they also have sentience and they want to have lives and there are things that they want to do for themselves. And I'll ask you more a little bit later because I was very intrigued by this idea of it. I was like, how does this work? Then I was like, they can't have babies, can they? I guess you could like program a mini one, but I was like, that I don't know how that works. Then of course I had those thoughts like, can they have sex? Then I was like, don't ask that question. That's not a question you need to ask right this second. I was like, this is a later question. Then I was like, do they even want sex? Like, how does this work? Like, because romance is the plot, but like, how does this work? But like, I had all of these thoughts because I was like, okay, can they?
It's funny that you say that because one of the dilemmas that I had was, could androids kiss? Because the thing is, why would you create an android to have feeling in its lips?
And
so I did actually navigate that, and so you will see there's something akin to kissing with androids, but you'll have to play the full game to find out what that is.
Okay, because like I said, I was having questions. Then I was like, Naja, we going into like sex bot territory. You need to stop. I was like, it's not that.
Like, stop it. I loved Travis, but there was some interesting
button
theories in
being
that.
Up the hoo-ha.
Yeah,
I never understood why would you put the button there? Like, why would it be up there? Like, who does that?
Foolishness.
I haven't thought about that in a while, but yeah, the button was like right up there. I was like, I guess you are pushing the right buttons. But
oh my god.
But like, yeah, like I had a lot of questions because each of your games is very different from the other. I love the variability in the types of stories that you tell. There's another dev that does that as GB Patch. Each of their games is completely different from the other, except for the Our Life series, which is literally just like has exploded in its own little thing on the side. But each of their games leading up to that were different in every way. And all of your games are the same way. You started with Pairs, which is sci-fi. Snowdrop. I say in quotation marks.
Of Ice and Snow?
Yes, Of Ice and Snow. Thank you. That was more of a fantasy, if I'm remembering correctly. Yes? Or am I wrong? Okay, it was more of a fantasy.
No, you're right.
Heroine for Hire is kind of a high fantasy slice of life vibe because she's trying to get a job.
Yeah.
She's trying to get a job. And then Ocean Pearls is like a fantasy as well. It's a fantasy, but it's more of a supernatural fantasy with the mer people. Hannah, what am I missing? You've got War of Roses, which is drama and angst and just slice of life. War of Roses. I will never forget leading on, who was it? It was Gabriel? No, it wasn't Gabriel. It was the caramel hottie who's the model.
Oh, Dominique.
Adonis. So Dominique, I led on Dominique and the puppy dog. I'm terrible with names. I'm so bad. Armando. I led the two of them on, and like they both showed up and was like, so what's going on here? Which are you gonna choose? And I was like, I wasn't prepared for this. I thought one of you would just back off naturally. How was I supposed to know y'all were both gonna be like, yeah, so you pick both of us. What's going on here? And I was like, oh shit. Stream ending, end of stream, no more. No, not doing this anymore. Nope.
Oh yeah.
So
War of Roses was really fun to develop for that reason. I normally don't like reading love triangles at all. Like I hate them because it's like
Oh.
if you like two people at the same time, you don't like either of them.
Oh,
But
true.
when I was writing War of Roses, I was like, okay, we're going full soap opera. Every chapter ends in a
Oh,
cliffhanger.
it
I
does.
want there to be love triangles. I want there to be foolishness going on in the background. We
So
don't know who's going to
much.
inherit the shop. Then you got
Yes.
your villain, Miss Baxter.
Yes. You
Um,
had me. I was like, wait, there are consequences? Oh shit. I was like, I haven't had this happen in a while. Because the last time that had happened is there's a Japanese Otome game called Storm Over Kai, where you can romance multiple characters. Well, you can romance one character, but you can also raise affection with the others. And if you do it right, then the character that you've been raising affection with unknowingly or on purpose will interrupt you and your date and try to steal you away from your boyfriend. And you can either decide to stay with your boyfriend and be loyal or dump their ass and go with the new person and start a whole new relationship. And then you have to deal with the fallout of that because your previous boyfriend doesn't want to talk to you clearly because you broke their heart. So like there's like a couple of months where they just don't, every time you run into them, they walk away. They don't talk to you. They don't want to say
oh
nothing.
wow.
And like you have to work back up to even talking to them. And that's how I felt with War of Roses because it was just like, oh shit, I didn't realize they were both gonna try to fight each other in front of my granddaddy's shop like that. Mm,
Yep.
uh,
And at the
children.
end, the party when you have to choose one. Oh,
Yes.
I really enjoyed writing that one
Oh
part.
my god, I was like, children, knowing full well it was my fault and I did it, and I'm like, children, stop it. There's
That
plenty.
reminds me, I remember I saw a screenshot of War of Roses, and somebody had chosen, because War of Roses is also a dress up game for those who
Yes.
don't know. Someone had chosen a blue blouse that matched Dominique's shirt, and they were like, couple gang gang, like Gucci couple gang gang, or something like that, and it made me die laughing. I loved it.
It's no, I love that. The dress up part was kind of fun because I mean it didn't really have too much of an effect on the gameplay. It was just kind of a fun little thing
Mhm.
to do. I would have loved to have seen it have like an effect on the character and be like, oh, why are you wearing that shirt? That looks like something that da 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 would like. And I'd be like, that's because it is. That's exactly what I was doing.
Was a choice. That was a deliberate choice. And this is why I didn't want people to feel pressure to wear a certain kind of clothing to impress someone.
Yes.
So I decided not to do that and instead based it on her personality because I felt if people are choosing what they want based off of how they're feeling in a moment, then their clothes should reflect that.
And I like that.
So I wanted that was intentional. I admit
That
that
was
might
good.
have been not the normal way to do it, like where you raise affection based off what you're wearing and the characters comment on what you're wearing. But I didn't want that pressure, so I just decided not to do it at all.
I think it was a good idea, honestly. It was fun. It was fun because I was like, oh, I'm gonna pick this and I'm gonna pick this. This don't even match, but I'm gonna put them together anyway because I want to play around with all these outfits that I just unlocked because I was being sassy today or I was being real nice. I got this nice little blouse. Oh, I got this little flower crown. Oh, that one's pretty. Oh, that one's rainbow. No, I like this one. It's orange. It matches this top. Let's go. Let's do it. But yeah, it was very fun. It was very fun. I loved it. Like,
Admit with War of Roses, I was really biased when I got the dress up portion commission because I was like, I don't want any straight hair. I was like, even if you're playing a white person, you're getting curly hair.
yes. Oh my god.
So I
That
did do
was
that on purpose, and then because I felt okay, I'm so sick of playing like pit crews and like dress up like doll games. Because shout out to dressupdoll.com, which was like my number one site when I was in fifth grade. But oh man, you never had curly options, and I was
no.
just like, if I have to pick 5 hairstyles, they're all gonna be curly.
Yes,
I'm doing
please.
I'm doing
No.
wavy hair. I just wanted all the hairs to be curly, wavy. Even the straight ones are wavy. And I was
And I
like,
appreciated it.
where are you
No.
hopeless? But I'm doing it anyway.
And I think when I first turned on the game, because like usually when you turn on a game and there's customization, the default design is always the light skinned one with the like straight hair. But when I first turned on War of Roses, it was the black design, like the black heroine design was like the first one, and I was like, and I think I might have commented, I was like, you know what? I was like, it's always the white person who's first. I like that the darkest skin tone is the first one you have to go through. I like that she's just on screen. We're gonna go through the other ones. We're totally gonna pick this dark skin one right here. Yeah, no, those are just there. I'm just gonna show you what they look like, but I'm totally gonna go with this one. And like her little puff.
Is definitely my love letter to like black girls. Like I
Yes.
feel like when I was creating that game, I actually originally all three love interests were black, but then I was like, but that's not really what you want to do. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to be exclusionary to that extent. So I went with Armando, who ironically is also my least favorite love interest. I think it's just because he's not my type, but I do see people that have said like, "Oh, he's like a puppy dog. He's really
Yes.
cute. He's like the normal one." So like
Yes.
they felt that they could connect with him because he's a delivery guy amongst a CEO
Yo,
and
and a
male
model.
models.
Yeah. I
So
was like,
yeah. So,
no.
so yeah, I tried to be a little bit more inclusive, and Armando is actually Filipino. I don't know if people know that, but
No, do
he
tell.
is.
I like that. See, like I said, you don't help the sis out because I don't be knowing. Like I said, sometimes I be looking like I know you're something, but I'm not sure, and I won't say it out loud because I'll be wrong. But no, I did appreciate that because I know there was some controversy with Validate early on. Well, not even early on, throughout the development of Validate, where folks were not being decent human beings about it. They were really pissed because they're like, yeah, you said you're touting diversity, but they're all black characters. And I was like, you sound very white right now. Like every time I saw somebody comment something like that on their stuff, I was like, you sound very white right now. Um, just because they're all brown skinned does not mean they're all the same. Just FYI. And then of course they threw in an Italian character, which incensed the pale skinned folks in like beyond words, which I thought was really kind of funny. Um, because a lot of folks are not used to being the afterthought character. They're not used to being an afterthought in a game. They're used to being front and center, prominently displayed. And it was just very interesting to see. And I love the way that the devs were just like, yeah, we're doing this anyway, but thanks for your feedback. And I was like, you got to be
Me.
unapologetic with it. You got to be unapologetic with it because it was like it was just nothing but vitriol they were getting. Like, why are all these characters black? Oh my god! For a dev in a game that says they're going to do diversity, this isn't diverse. They're all black, and I was like, technically they're not. That's what them little flaggies above their head mean. They mean that's where they're from. But you know, whatever. God forbid you look at a map or anything. God forbid. So, you know, there's always this kind of like backlash against like characters like when there's a perceived slight, like we're supposed to accept it if there's only one black character in a game, but God forbid there's like not even a white person in a game because then it's the end of the freaking world and it's not diverse enough. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, friends. Like, I don't know
When I
what to tell
create
you.
white characters, first off, I actually have a lot of white characters. They're just not in my games. Like I write stories, and I often have like white characters in my stories because once again, like I grew up with a lot of different backgrounds, and that included white people as well. But when I make my games, I'm like, look, y'all, if I make a white character and they're more popular than my black characters, I'm gonna feel some kind of way.
There's a
I'm going
problem.
to feel some kind of way. And that happened actually when I created Celestia. Valendister was
Oh,
far more popular than Sakeo or
wait.
Solace.
I'm sorry, wait.
Now,
Sakeo? Sakeo is my baby.
yes,
I
more
love
popular than
Sakeo.
Sakeo. Sakeo is my boy. Now, I understand why people don't like Solace. Now,
I mean, yeah,
granted,
Solace is,
Solace is very, very opinionated.
yes,
He's very prideful.
yes.
And so he does have negative qualities, but I wanted to show a character that could have negative qualities and still be a good man.
Yeah.
So I intentionally wrote him that way, and I was okay with that. But Takeo beneath Belundister? What? Y'all crazy.
No, I played Takeo's right on stream, and I
um,
was just like, I love this man. I love everything about him. I just want him to be happy.
and
And you were like, it's gonna be tragic. I
I'll
was
tell
like,
you another
stop.
thing. It was outvoted because my story had no positive endings for Sakeo.
I know.
But my team complained and they were like, Jessinia, you have to have something, like the best ending has to be nice. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
that he share his life force. But tell me that the ending where he dies and they end up together anyway isn't a beautiful
Oh,
ending.
it was, but it was still one of the moments where I was like, "Damn, my heart." And you had warned, and the thing is, you had warned me beforehand, and I was like, "Okay, whatever. It can't be that bad." Then I started playing. I was like, "Oh shit, he's going to die." I was like the whole time. I was like, "Why did you make me love him if he's going to die?" Oh fuck. I was like, "Damn it, got me again with these characters that I love, but they're gonna die." I was like, I was so hurt. My heart was aching. I was like, I just want him to be happy with his books and his poetry and shit. Like, can he just be happy, please? I was like, damn, forget the rest of them. Just I want him. But that's a shame, and that's frustrating because I think the Validate team said the same thing. They're like, why are y'all like? Why? She's like, they were like, I will take this character out of the game. This should not be the most important character to you all in the game. There are all these other characters, and this is the one that y'all want to be hyper focused on. Like, why? Why? And I think part of it comes from how we're just beat over the head with like whiteness and these lighter skinned characters as being more romanceable and more lovable than darker skinned characters. And like if you see characters in media, they tend to be, if they are brown, they're either ambiguously brown or they're not as dark. And those are the ones that get love and romance and affection and treated with care and, kindness. And they're the good and the light characters. And then you see characters that are darker and they're either the villain, they're secretly evil, or they're just not quote unquote worthy of love. So I really do appreciate having these characters that are darker and of different shades and hues in these romance themed games because I'm chocolate. I'm a little brown. I'm brown over here. Like not even a little bit. Like I'm actually black. And I'm worthy of love and I'm worthy of affection. And when you play these games constantly, like I play a lot of Otome games, and you kind of get in your head like, damn, can a black sis get love too? Like, damn, can we find romance somewhere too? Why can't I be the lead in this? Why can't I be a romanceable character? Why can't I be someone that someone would want in these stories? And I mean, again, I have to like take a step back and be like, well, maybe this is not necessarily written with me in mind, 100%. But it's frustrating. So I really appreciate when I do see these characters in your games and in other games where they are romanceable. They are the leads of their romance story of their dreams, that kind of thing. It's not always pretty and it's not always perfect, but it's always it's like I can have this story too. Like we get shoehorned into urban fantasies or slice of life stuff, but we can be in a high fantasy. We can be in a sci-fi epic. We can be in I don't know. I'm forgetting genres. I'm tired, but we can be in these different roles and these Victorian. Like it wasn't Victorian. What was Celestia?
It was Regency, like a
Regency.
Regency sci-fi.
We can be in a Regency era piece and wear these beautiful ball gowns and still be there and exist as a character. Like you don't have to just be one thing, and I really appreciate that because again, and I know we had this conversation about pairs and about fantasy because I'd asked you like what was the impetus behind you choosing to do pairs as a sci-fi romance kind of thing, and you were talking about how most of the foreign folks in like early sci-fi media were coded as like alien or they were the other, and you wanted to tell these stories where you could have these characters existing in those roles but also existing within this kind of cultural consciousness. I think I'm trying to think of words like real words.
Think like um when how do I want to put it? A lot of the times when I pick the characterizations of my characters, I'm very deliberate, very deliberate. For example, in Heroine for Hire, the protagonist is mixed. So you meet her mother. Her mother is chocolate. You don't meet her father, but you can
You infer.
assume that he is paler because they are light and they have blonde hair. They're not light, but they're just brown. But I wanted, by having her mother there, I wanted to show this character is also black, just so y'all not confused. Number one. Number two, her sister has curly hair, very
Liar.
different texture from her own. Yeah, Liar and Lute. So Lute has curly hair. Liar, the main character, has straight hair, and it's blonde. But her mother has like an afro. And then when I created Fi, the dark skinned love interest, I really wanted to challenge the trope of the scary black man
Yes.
because it makes me sick, makes me ill. I hate it. And I wanted to have a character who is thought of negatively because of his
Like just appearance.
persona, his personality, and his appearance. But once you like actually talk to him, not even you have to get to know him,
Oh,
but once you talk to him at all, you can see that he is gentle, he
teddy
is
bear.
kind, he's considerate, he's a teddy bear.
Big
And
old
you only have to talk to him once. The only thing is that he's blunt and
yeah.
he's like, "What are you doing this for? I don't understand."
He
Or
is.
that doesn't look like a rabbit. Why did you draw this?
Yeah.
Like,
But he is
he's
so
really
sweet.
fun character, but he's really sweet. And one thing I will say about Phi and H for H or Heroine for Hire is that Phi is the more popular character over
He should
Varys.
be.
People actually rarely play Varys's route. Sometimes I talk to people and I'm like, "Hey, did you play Heroine for Hire?" And they're like, "Yeah, I only played Phi's route though." And I'm like, I can't be mad at that. It's Phi,
I
so
mean,
okay.
Varys was special. Like Varys was doing shit. I was like, bruh, stop. Like I can't with you. I was like,
Yeah,
I was like,
Varys is
dude.
unbearable. I loved writing him,
I was like, dude, I'm
but
a
just like in general, like picking a CEO character because once again, I wanted to see a character in power. He likes yachting, like
yes.
going on a yacht and sailing, and he's a little pretentious, but not too much.
Yes.
It's just his personality. And then you have Adonis, who's like this male model, and he's beautiful. He's got those long eyelashes, and the
Yo.
man is tall. So I wanted to pick deliberate. Sometimes I pick deliberate stereotypes, and then I'm like, I'm subverting this. Sometimes I just pick. This is a position I don't normally see Black people in, but clearly we are there, so I'm going to choose this person. So even though the main character Rose is a Black girl, as the default, she's a business owner. She has
Yes.
choices to make in her life, and it's like I also wanted to give more than just the romance. So there's this storyline with her grandfather, and her
Yes.
grandfather's a different shade from her. There's a lot that I really want to deliberately show, like different aspects of Blackness, not just us with afros, not just us with light skin and 3C hair,
Fair
but
enough.
all the spectrum. Pairs, going back to pairs, there's Carmelita, who is Afro Latina, hence her name, and
Love.
Ricardo, who is straight up Latino. Like,
I love them.
there's so many things that I wanted to do when I was creating. So,
I love
yeah.
them. And I love them. Okay, so I love that we circle back to that. So this black enough thing. So I remember a little while ago, a couple months back, maybe last year, who knows? Time is an illusion. But you had posted on your Twitter because some folks had said that the main character of Belle Automata, that they weren't black enough. Their hairstyle wasn't black enough. The little braids, like the princess braids. And I was like, I like blinked. I like went, excuse me? What about this isn't black enough? And you had mentioned that you were going to change the design. And I was like, why? Like, my first thought was, why? Fuck them. Like, literally, first thought was like, fuck them, why? And you had put up a tweet and you were like, you were really frustrated at the time. And you're just kind of like, I don't understand why, this is the thing, how you can tell me my character's not black enough. Like, what is this? Like, what is that? And people were like, they were giving their support of you and like your decision. Like, they were like, you're going to change it, but like, because you thought about it and you like, maybe I could change it and make it a little different. And I was just like, I think I DM'd you and I was like, I saw your tweet and I was like, I'm confused. I was like, I don't understand. I was like, who was it? So I can go after them. And I was like, no. I was like, you're not gonna be like that. Down on the main. But like, it was just very frustrating because it goes back to like how a lot of black folks have gotten that, oh, you talk white or you don't act black. You're not black enough. And it's like, what is black enough for you? And this harkens back to, of course, the stereotypes and things like that. But if you wanted to share a bit about that experience from your perspective that we probably didn't get because we weren't there at the time, but to have folks come to you and tell you that this character's design wasn't black enough, and then the thought process that went through that, like first the initial like what the hell, to like actually taking the time to think about it, and then you did say you were going to change it. I don't know if you're going to continue to change it or if you're going to leave it as is, but just around that quote unquote controversy, just I wanted to talk about it and get your thoughts on that and just hear
Okay.
a bit.
So my initial reaction was frustration. I actually cried a little bit over it.
No,
I'm
I
a
don't blame
softie,
you.
okay? So
Listen.
I was really frustrated because it came from other black people. And I was just like, you guys, first off, goddess braids are a valid style.
Yes, they are.
Like, people wear goddess braids all the time. Why y'all acting new? Number
Constantly.
one. Two, I had actually changed the design already because the initial design did not look black. She looked like a brown anime girl. So I had her add edges, I changed her hairline shape, I changed her nose shape and her lip shape. All of those different things because I wanted the character to look and be coded black even though she's an android. That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, my frustration was because I create my games. Black people are my initial audience. So to be rejected by my initial audience felt really hurtful, which is why I cried. But once I got over that, I was like, okay, what can I do to make sure that this character is coded black? Because that's the number one thing that I want. So I decided to go with passion twists as an alternative style and to have her unbraid the goddess braids and just have two braids going back like this. The reason that I did that was because I wanted the styles to be identifiable so that you could see when her hair is not braided, it's still curly. She is a curly girl,
Yeah.
number one. And number two, I wanted the character to feel like she could be identified with and that they would know that if she took her braids out, it wouldn't just be stick straight hair.
Yeah.
So even though her hair is not choosable, depending on the route, she does change her own hair.
Oh.
So there is a scene in the Nightmare Princess route where she decides that she needs to do something to make herself look new because she's in a new life. So she decides to like look up different styles and she chooses passion twist. So for the remainder of that route, she mostly has passion twist. Then there's another route where she is talking with Zafir, the light blue character, and she's like, he's training her on music, like how to play music. And so he's like, let your hair loose, like, get comfortable. So she takes out her braids and she has this beautiful 3C curl. And so there is, while her hair isn't choosable, I wanted people to go through a hair journey with her so that they could understand that this character really is black.
Yes.
On the other hand, one of the things that did frustrate me is that they were talking about the whole cast. The whole cast is not black. As I mentioned, Klaus is mixed, and Klaus's voice actor is also mixed. So that was something that I really wanted to have done. Additionally, Zafir is ambiguously brown on purpose. I rarely make characters that way, but he's meant to be a pop star, and I had the feeling that he would want to be identifiable to many different cultures because the planet that it's set on, Odani, is a corporate planet, and many different types of people live there. So I gave him curly hair because he's still brown and not that ambiguous. So I put him kind of in the middle. Roman and the Nightmare Prince are black. They look black. Like, Roman has curly hair with shaved sides. The Nightmare Prince has locks. And I wanted that to be a staple of the character. So I don't really know what they were talking about because it just didn't make sense to me. Like, it just, to this day, I'm like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Like, I think the characters definitely look black. But black enough does not exist except for in the case of ambiguously brown. It just doesn't. If a character is ambiguously brown and they have straight hair, most likely I'm not going to think they're black because most black males don't straighten their hair. That's like the far majority. And so, like, for me, if I see a character who's ethnically like ambiguous and they have straight hair, I'm not going to assume they're black. I might assume they're Latinx. I might assume maybe they're like Southeast Asian, but I won't look at them and go, "Oh yes, that person is 100% black." So that's the only time that I think being black enough really means anything, because characters can be coded black. But aside from that, to me, it doesn't really exist. All right, I can't hear you anymore.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So what I was saying is, I think because of the time, it would probably be best to move over to the game. And some of the questions I was going to ask you were mostly about gameplay and like the game itself. So we could just bump over to Belle Automata, and you'll still be on screen, and you'll still be able to talk and everything, and we can still have conversations while we're playing, which is what we did before. Which means we're probably not going to make like a crap ton of progress on this game, but I'm loving the conversations that we're having. I'm loving this dialogue, especially being able to talk to a Black developer and to get their insight into like game development, and, like things that they want to see in these games and what they do and the thought process that goes behind it, and how thoughtful you are in the choices that you make with your characters, because it's a lot of little things that I don't think people think about when they're crafting characters. There's nuance to it, and within the nuance of just like creating the personalities and things like that. It's the design of the characters, the way their hair looks, the clothes they wear, how they talk, what they do, how they move their hands, that sort of thing. And I think it's really great, and I want to see that in motion with the game itself while we're having this conversation still. Because yeah, and I do know that you have a Twitch channel. As I'm switching things over, you do have a Twitch channel, and I noticed that a lot of your games have a lot of like great world building and lore as a part of them, and I want to probably touch on some of that in the gameplay side of things when we're playing Belle Automata, because I know for a fact that you have a whole history planned out behind the scenes that is waiting to be exposed to the world. So while we're playing, I'm gonna ask questions, and these are the same questions I'll be asking you after I play, after the fact, but you just go get them in real time. So that'll be fun. There we go.